before we begin, I hope you're somewhere safe, warm, and maybe just a little curious. Nights have a way of opening doors we don't notice during the day. The quiet hum of machines, the glow of parking lot lights, and the rhythm of routine can all hide something deeper, something older, something left behind. Whether you're here out of fascination, fear, or just looking for company in the silence, I'm glad you made it. What you're about to hear are 8 true stories. Not true in the sense of headlines or police reports, but true in the way certain places feel. These are accounts from people who worked the night shift at McDonald's. People who noticed things others ignored. People who encountered what can only be described as echoes. Maybe they were hauntings, maybe something more. I'll let you decide. Let's begin with our first story. One night shift, one mirror, and something staring back. Story 1. The mirror. In the employee restroom. I never thought the summer job I picked to pay for community college would follow me into the quiet hours of my adulthood, like a shadow that never really let go. I was 19 back then, a first-year psych major at Central Piedmont Community College in Charlotte, North Carolina, living with my older cousin Jamal, who worked double shifts at the auto body shop 2 blocks away. My parents lived in Gastonia, but they figured a little independence might toughen me up, so I took a night shift job at the McDonald's off North Tryon Street. The location wasn't bad for foot traffic, but the hours were brutal and unpredictable. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., mostly kitchen cleanup and late-night drive-through orders. The first few nights were rough, but manageable. I had headphones stashed in my apron, and the rhythm of flipping patties and sweeping grease-stained tiles became familiar, comforting, even if tiring. There was a kind of solidarity between the night crew, too. Darla was a nursing student who barely talked, unless it was about anatomy exams, and Rico was a high school dropout with a sharp tongue and even sharper instincts about people. He didn't trust anyone and made no secret of it, but somehow we got along. By my second week, I started noticing something odd in the men's bathroom at the back of the store. Every time I went to mop in there, the mirror above the sink had a faint, chalky smudge in the shape of a circle with jagged lines inside it. At first, I thought it was a cleaning product residue, but even after I scrubbed it clean, it would reappear the next night, always the same crude shape. I didn't mention it to Darla or Rico, thinking it was just me being tired or maybe some dumb prank from the kids who hung around the lot behind the dumpster. One night around 3 a.m., the store was completely dead. Just me and Rico restocking sauce packets when the power cut for a few seconds, just long enough for the fluorescent lights to hum and flicker off, then on again. We both froze instinctively. I went to the back to check the breaker panel, and on the way past the bathroom door, which was slightly ajar, I caught a glimpse of the mirror and stopped dead. The circle was there, but it was different. It was filled in now, more detailed, like someone had added eyes and what looked like a long, crooked smile still drawn in that same ghostly white chalky film. I told Rico what I saw, and for once he didn't make a joke. Instead, he got real quiet and asked if I remembered the guy from 2 weeks ago, the one who had OD'd in the lot behind the store. I vaguely did. There had been cop cars and an ambulance one morning when I came in, but I hadn't paid attention. Rico said he used to come in around 3 a.m. every night, order a black coffee, no cream, no sugar, and sit in the same booth until sunrise. He never talked much, but he always went to the bathroom before leaving. Every single night. Apparently the night he died, the security camera caught him heading to the back, but not coming out. They found him hours later, behind the store, slumped next to the dumpster with a half-empty bottle of cough syrup and a notepad in his coat. The police said it was an accident, but rumor had it he left something scratched into the mirror that night before he died. I didn't sleep well that morning after my shift. I kept thinking about the face drawn in the mirror, the smile, the eyes that seemed to follow me. Even after I left, I told myself it was fatigue, that I was being irrational. Just another case study in overactive imagination. But something in me shifted. I started dreading the bathroom every shift. Not because of what I might see, but because I was starting to feel watched. Not physically, but spiritually. Like something lingered in the space between the noise and the silence. One Thursday morning, I stayed late to help Darla with inventory. The sun had just started to rise and the golden light crept through the grease-streaked windows. Darla asked me why I seemed more tired than usual, and I told her about the mirror. She didn't laugh, didn't mock, just stared at me and said she believed me. Then she told me something I'll never forget. Sometimes the dead stay close to the places they felt invisible in life. Maybe not to hurt us, but because they still need someone to see them. That stuck with me, more than the image in the mirror, more than the flickering lights or Rico's half-spoken warnings. It made me wonder how many people move through life so unseen that even in death they try to make a mark in the only way they know how. And maybe that's why the smudge kept returning. Maybe it wasn't a warning, but a whisper. A trace of someone who had once wanted to be noticed, even for a moment. That night, I brought a cloth and cleaning spray, and for the first time, I didn't scrub the mirror out of fear. I wiped it gently like I was removing dust from a photograph, and I whispered quietly, "I see you." Then I turned off the lights and walked away. I don't know if the shape ever came back. I quit 2 weeks later when Jamal offered me a spot helping him at the shop. It paid better and didn't come with invisible eyes in the dark. But that job at McDonald's taught me something no textbook ever did. People leave echoes, and sometimes those echoes are cries, disguised as patterns or shadows or smudges on a mirror. You don't need to be a psychic to feel them. You just have to pay attention. So if you're working a late shift or walking home alone and something doesn't feel right, don't just shrug it off. Maybe someone is trying to be seen, not to scare you, but to be remembered. The world has enough ghosts born from loneliness. We don't need more. And if any of this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of a moment you brushed off or a face you forgot, take a second to think about them now. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stick around. I'll be here quietly, bringing light to the places we're often too busy to look at. Sometimes even the darkest corners deserve to be noticed. Some encounters don't come from reflections. Some arrive through the drive-thru again and again. Here's Story 2. Story 2. The Customer Who Wanted One Brown Packet. I took the overnight shift at the McDonald's on West Grand Boulevard in Detroit because I needed the money and because I didn't mind the quiet. The city never truly sleeps, but between 2 and 5 a.m., the streets outside slowed down just enough to breathe. I worked the drive-thru window, mostly with occasional breaks to restock the prep station or mop near the fryers. My manager trusted me to run the front solo. Some nights I didn't argue. Less talk, less noise. I was 28, recently divorced, and just trying to start over. I wasn't looking for anything except stability. I didn't expect that something would start looking for me. The first time it happened, I didn't think much of it. It was a Tuesday, a little after 2:45 a.m. when a black Nissan pulled up to the drive-thru. I hadn't seen it come around the corner, and the camera feed blinked once before stabilizing. The driver never showed their face. The window was down only a crack. They ordered a medium fry and a milkshake, which wasn't unusual, but what caught my attention was the last thing they said. In a flat, expressionless tone, the speaker requested one brown packet. No flavor, no brand. Just one brown packet. I assumed they meant barbecue sauce, so I threw one in the bag. When I handed it through the window, they didn't speak. Their hand was pale, slender, unmoving for a moment before taking the food, Then the car rolled away into the fog beyond the parking lot. I looked down at the monitor. The order had no ticket number, just a blank screen where the last transaction should have been. The bag I had packed wasn't registered. The register didn't beep. It was like the order had never existed. I shook it off, blamed the system, blamed my own exhaustion. But then it happened again. The following night, same time, same order, same brown packet. This time I watched more closely. The car had no license plate. The headlights were slightly tinted duller than normal. The voice was distorted, not robotic, but not fully human either. Something about it scratched the inside of my brain like a memory I couldn't quite place. I told my coworker Kyle about it when he came in for the morning shift, but he just laughed and said I should lay off the energy drinks. The third time I didn't laugh. The car didn't appear on the outer camera at all, just blinked into view at the speaker box. This time I asked for clarification. I wanted to hear them say the word. Instead, there was silence for 10 seconds, followed by static. Then the same phrase, one brown packet. I prepared the bag slower. This time, my hands colder than usual, I included the same barbecue sauce. The hand that reached out for the food looked thinner now, bonier, like the skin was stretched too tightly over the fingers. The nails were short, flat, grayish. I pulled back instinctively, but they took the bag. The window hissed shut as the car disappeared from the camera range once again. No beeping, no receipt, just a blank entry. By now, I was starting to feel it. The unease crept in during my break. I sat near the back entrance where we kept the cleaning supplies. My hand still tingled. I thought maybe it was nerves, maybe I was just tired. But deep down, I felt something else. Not fear, exactly, but awareness. Like someone had whispered my name behind a closed door. On Thursday night, I waited. I didn't take my break. I watched the monitor's eyes fixed on the entrance lane. At 2:46 a.m., the lights flickered in the kitchen. The cameras blinked off for a split second. When they returned, the car was already at the window. No engine sound, no previous stop. Just there. I stood frozen. I didn't touch the register. I didn't prepare the order. I stared at the window, and after a few seconds, the voice came again. One brown packet. I leaned closer, not out of courage, but out of something more primal. Maybe curiosity, maybe defiance. I didn't respond. I watched the crack in the window, the same pale hand twitching ever so slightly. I stared into the opening, and for the first time I saw the eye. Just one dark. Too round, too motionless. It looked at me like it had been waiting for years. Like it recognized me. Then it blinked slowly. The voice came again, softer now. One brown packet. I reached for a packet, but not barbecue this time. I grabbed an old packet of soy sauce from a forgotten bin, faded and dusty, almost the same brown. I handed it out slowly. The hand took it without hesitation. The eye disappeared behind the frame, and then the car was gone. The morning after, I asked management to check the tapes. The footage was corrupted. The segment from 2:30 to 3 a.m. had static bars and frozen frames. No car, no transaction. Nothing. I didn't press it. What would I even say? I didn't see the car again after that night. But sometimes around 2:45, the lights in the kitchen still flicker. Sometimes the register beeps without a touch. And sometimes I find a brown packet sitting by the window. Not ours. Not any brand I recognize, just a small, nameless pouch as if waiting to be delivered. I still work nights. Bills don't stop. Life doesn't pause for questions. You'll never get answers to, but I've learned to listen better. When things repeat, even small things pay attention. Patterns are messages. They may not come with explanations, but they mean something. The world tries to speak in subtle ways through radio static and blinking lights and untraceable orders. And if something feels wrong, don't ignore it just because others laugh. Your instincts are older than reason. They kept your ancestors alive before science had words. Listen to them. If this story reminds you of something you've brushed off or a moment that didn't make sense, maybe now's the time to think back. Maybe not everything unexplained is meaningless. And if you've ever worked a lonely shift and felt the air change around you for no reason, know this. You're not alone. Not always old costumes don't always stay in the past, especially when they're waiting in storage. This is Story 3. Story 3. The Mask. Behind the fryer room, Anchorage winters are long and dark, the kind of dark that gets into your bones. I had moved up there from Phoenix thinking I could escape my past with a clean start and colder weather. I found work quickly at a McDonald's off Diamond Boulevard. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to cover rent on a one-bedroom apartment and left me alone during the night shifts. That's all I wanted, just enough to disappear. I was 35, working maintenance and odd jobs. No real friends, no real attachments. My only consistent contact was Shannon, the night manager, who had this calm voice that made you feel like things were under control, even when they clearly weren't. Most nights were uneventful. I'd mop the floor, check the grease traps, fix loose tiles, and sweep out the storage room behind the kitchen. The play place had been shut down months before I arrived. It was boarded up, but we kept some overflow inventory in there. One night, just after closing, Shannon asked me to check a leak in the back corner of the play place. She said customers had complained about a mildew smell. I grabbed a flashlight and a wrench and made my way through the dusty hallway. The entrance door creaked like it hadn't been opened in weeks. Inside, it smelled like plastic and rot. The slide was cracked. The carpet was sticky. The ball pit was half full and filled with shadows. And then sitting in the corner, wedged between a broken soda crate and a stack of paper towel rolls, was a Ronald McDonald mask. It wasn't the plastic smiling kind from the store displays. This one was rubbery aged, discolored. The red paint around the mouth had faded to a dull brown. The eyes were hollow. The wig was matted and gray. I picked it up and felt an immediate chill. It wasn't cold from the air. It was something else. Something beneath the surface. I took it out to the utility sink, washed it off, and planned to toss it in the dumpster. But when I stepped away for a second to check the leaking pipe, the mask was gone. I searched for 10 minutes. Shannon came by and asked what was taking so long. I didn't tell her about the mask. I just said the pipe was rusted and needed replacement. She nodded and went back to the office. That night, I didn't sleep well. My apartment heater made strange clanking sounds. I kept seeing that empty-eyed face in the dark corners of the room. I told myself it was just imagination, triggered by exhaustion and bad lighting. The next night, I found the mask again. This time in the supply closet behind the fryers. It was perched on top of a mop handle, staring out like someone had placed it there deliberately. I didn't touch it. I closed the door and walked away. But something had changed. The air in the store felt heavier. The walk-in freezer hummed louder. The security lights flickered without cause. Shannon noticed my tension and asked if I was okay. I said yes, but my hands were shaking. 3 nights later, it got worse. I was restocking lids near the front counter when I saw movement in the reflection of the napkin dispenser, a shape. A flash of red and white. When I turned around, nothing was there, but I knew what I saw. I walked through the whole store, checked every camera feed. Nothing. The system had frozen between 3:01 and 3:07 a.m., just static. 6 full minutes gone, I finally told Shannon. She didn't laugh, she didn't call me crazy, she told me something strange. Years ago, before corporate redesigned the uniforms and mascots, there had been a regional Ronald McDonald actor assigned to do events in the area. He worked birthdays, school visits, hospital trips. Everyone loved him until he started acting odd, staring too long, showing up at stores unannounced, refusing to remove the costume. He was let go quietly, but a few weeks later he was found dead in an abandoned building 3 blocks from this very location. They said he had passed from exposure. He still wore the costume. The mask was missing. That night, I went back to the play place. I had to know if the mask was still there, if it had followed me, or if I was just unraveling. Inside, the air felt colder than usual. The flashlight flickered twice before dying. I reached the corner and saw it. The mask resting neatly on the slide as if waiting for me. I stared at it for a long time. My chest tightened. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then I turned away and walked out. I didn't quit. I kept working. Bills still needed paying. But from that night on, I stopped going near the play place. I told Shannon to lock it, to seal it off permanently. She didn't ask why. I think she knew. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes people get erased, not because they deserve to be forgotten, but because others want to forget what they became. But remnants remain, in basements, in storage closets, in the cold spaces between security footage and memory. They linger waiting to be acknowledged. And maybe all they want is to be seen, to be remembered, not for how they ended, but for who they once were. Maybe the scariest things aren't monsters. Maybe they're just people abandoned and left behind in costumes they couldn't take off. If you've ever ignored something that didn't feel right or laughed off your own intuition, maybe now is the time to listen closer. Not everything can be explained. Not everything should be. But awareness is a kind of respect, even for what we fear. Not all ghosts show their face. Some simply leave messages on a mirror no one else can read. Welcome to Story 4. What happened in bathroom 2? I started working nights at the McDonald's on Monterey Road in San Jose because it was the only place hiring that didn't ask too many questions. I was 21, trying to pay my way through school, and needed hours that wouldn't interfere with class. The pay wasn't great, but I didn't mind. It was quiet, and I liked routine. The building was older than most in the area, a 2-story layout with customer seating downstairs and employee lockers office space, and a private staff bathroom tucked away on the 2nd floor. They called it Bathroom 2A. Most of the staff avoided it unless they had to. Some said it smelled weird. Others said it was just creepy. I never thought much of it. At least not at first. My shifts usually started at 8 and ran until 4 in the morning. I handled prep drive-through and closing duties. Shannon, the supervisor, ran the floor with this strange mix of sharp discipline and motherly concern. She liked things done her way, but always made sure we got our breaks. There was also Nate, a kid barely out of high school, who mostly just wanted to sneak fries and complain about everything. I kept my head down, did the work, and tried not to get involved in whatever gossip filled the break room. It was my 3rd week when I first noticed something off about 2A. I went up to grab a fresh roll of paper towels and used the restroom while I was up there. As I washed my hands, I noticed a word faintly written on the mirror. It was smudged and looked like it had been wiped halfway, but I could still make it out. It said, "Listen." I figured someone had played a prank. Maybe Nate being stupid. I didn't say anything, just grabbed the supplies and went back downstairs. 2 nights later, I went up again. This time the mirror was clean, but the lights flickered when I closed the door. Only for a second. Still, it made my skin crawl. I chalked it up to bad wiring. That's what happens in old buildings, I told myself. That's what happens when you've been awake too long, but the feeling stayed with me. The silence upstairs was different, not peaceful, hollow. Like the air wasn't still, but waiting. Later that week, Shannon asked me to retrieve a stack of training manuals from the filing cabinet in the upstairs office. It was after 2 a.m., and the store was dead. I took the keys and headed up. The hallway was quiet as ever. I passed the bathroom door and heard water dripping. I paused. The sink should have been off. I opened the door slowly and stepped inside. The faucet wasn't dripping. It was off. But there was a puddle forming below it, even though nothing was leaking. I looked up and saw the mirror. There was no writing this time, but I saw something else. My own reflection wasn't moving with me. It was subtle. A half-second delay when I turned my head. I blinked and leaned closer. The lights flickered again. My reflection didn't. I left. Quickly, I didn't mention it to Shannon. I didn't want her to think I was losing it, but something had shifted inside me. The bathroom wasn't just uncomfortable, it was wrong. The next night, Nate went up to clock out early. We didn't see him for 20 minutes. Shannon sent me up to find him. I checked the locker room. Empty. The office. Empty. Then I pushed open the bathroom door. Nate was just standing there, staring at the mirror. His eyes were glassy. His hands were by his sides, fists clenched. I said his name and he didn't respond. I stepped in, touched his shoulder, and he flinched so hard he nearly hit the wall. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Then he muttered something about a sound. He said the mirror was whispering. I got him downstairs and told Shannon he wasn't feeling well. She sent him home. After that, I started checking the mirror every night. I don't know why. Curiosity. Maybe fear. I stopped using the bathroom. I'd walk in, stare at the glass, and wait. Nothing happened at first. Then one night, I saw movement in the reflection behind me. I spun around. No one was there. But in the mirror, for a fraction of a second, someone was a face. Thin, pale, not mine. Watching. I stopped breathing. When I blinked, it was gone. But it had seen me, and I had seen it. I told Shannon I couldn't hold it in anymore. To my surprise, she didn't laugh. She didn't doubt. She told me a girl had died in that bathroom 20 years ago. Overdose. She'd been a night shift worker like me. No one found her until morning. They cleaned it up, painted the walls, but the story stayed with the building. People claimed to hear her crying. Others said she left messages, warnings, pleas. And once you truly saw her, she wouldn't stop. Shannon said she still used the bathroom sometimes. Not often. But she never looked in the mirror. That was the trick, she said. Don't engage, don't acknowledge, just use the sink and leave. I stopped going up there alone, but even downstairs I felt her in the flicker of the fryer lights, in the hum of the soda machine, in the dead silence between midnight and 3. I don't think she was angry, just lost, trapped in a loop, hoping someone would notice, someone would listen. If you've ever walked into a room and felt like something was already there, if you've heard your name when no one was around, maybe it's not just your mind playing tricks. Maybe someone's trying to be seen, trying to be heard. I still work nights. I still pass by 2A sometimes. The door stays closed now. The light underneath always faintly glows even when the switch is off. I don't look in the mirror. I don't need to. What if someone waited outside every night, never speaking, never leaving? The 5th story begins now. Story 5. The boy who waited outside the lobby. The McDonald's on East 41st Street in Tulsa was quiet at night and I liked it that way. I was 25 and had just been promoted to night shift supervisor. It wasn't a big title, but it meant I could keep things running my way. The regulars stopped coming by after midnight. The lights dimmed a little more than they were supposed to. The buzz of the soda machines and the soft clatter of fryer oil became the only company I had until morning. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt manageable. Predictable. That changed on a Tuesday. It started with a sound, a soft tapping against the lobby window near the front door. Not hard enough to be knocking, just light rhythmic. I looked at the monitor above the counter. The exterior camera facing the entrance showed nothing. I muted the drive-thru headset and walked toward the glass. That's when I saw him. A child, maybe 6 years old, standing just outside the double doors. He wore a faded blue hoodie and gray pants. His hands were at his sides. His face was blank. Not sad, not scared, just still. Like he was waiting for something. I hesitated. It was almost 2:15 in the morning. No cars in the lot, no parents in sight. I walked to the door and pulled it open halfway. The cold air rushed in. I asked if he was okay. He didn't respond. He didn't move. Just stared past me, through me. I stepped closer, but before I could say anything else, he turned around and walked away. No hurry, no sound. He disappeared into the shadows beyond the lot. I waited a few moments, then closed the door, locked it, and went back to the counter. I checked the cameras again. Nothing. Not even a glimpse of him walking away. The next night at exactly 2:11, the tapping returned. This time I didn't move. I stayed behind the counter and watched the live feed. He was there again, standing in the same spot, same clothes, same expression. I turned on the lobby lights. He didn't flinch. I walked to the window, slowly, heart pounding harder than it should have. He didn't look at me. He just stared ahead like something inside the building held his attention. I opened the door again and stepped out into the parking lot, but he was gone. Over the next week, it happened 5 more times. Always at 2:11. Always the same boy. The others didn't believe me. I told Sarah one of the morning openers, and she joked that maybe I was just tired. Said the night shift messes with your mind. I stopped bringing it up. One night after a particularly quiet shift, I decided to try something different. I left the door unlocked and waited inside. The lobby, lights dimmed, cameras rolling. I sat facing the glass just out of view and watched. Right on schedule, the tapping started. I turned my head slowly and saw him. This time he was closer, almost against the glass, his face still unreadable. But there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A flicker of emotion, not fear, not sadness. Something older, something that didn't belong in a child. I stood up and approached the door. My hand rested on the handle. I felt the chill through the metal. I hesitated, then pulled it open slowly. The boy didn't move. I stepped outside, 1 foot on the concrete. He lifted his head slightly. For the first time, he made eye contact. My breath caught. His eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, deep and still and empty. My hand dropped from the handle and I stepped back. The door closed between us. He turned and vanished into the dark once more. After that, things got worse. I started finding small handprints on the glass in the morning. Smudges that couldn't be wiped away completely. I began to hear footsteps above the ceiling tiles, even though we had no second floor. The fryers hissed when they weren't on. I started dreaming about them. Standing at my bedroom door, tapping gently, always, at 2:11, I started researching old news stories, forums. Anything I could find. I discovered that 10 years earlier, a boy had gone missing less than a mile from the store. Last seen leaving a nearby apartment complex. His name was Aaron. His body was never found. The case had gone cold. The address listed in the article matched a complex now condemned, an empty one you could just barely see from our parking lot. If you stood at the right angle, I began to wonder if the boy at the window was Aaron. If somehow, in the quiet hours he was trying to come home, I left an old Happy Meal toy outside the door one night. It was a red race car, still clean. I watched from the camera feed. He didn't appear that time, but in the morning, the toy was gone. In its place was a small note folded. Once I opened it, inside was a single word written in shaky handwriting. Cold. I don't know what it meant. Maybe it was how he felt. Maybe it was a warning. I stopped working nights. A few weeks later, I couldn't take it anymore. The pressure, the silence, the feeling of being watched. But even now, I still wake up some nights around 2:11. Sometimes I hear that soft tapping against my bedroom window, even though I live on the second floor. Some people say kids are more open to things we can't explain, that their minds haven't closed off the way ours have. Maybe he wasn't haunting the restaurant. Maybe he was just trying to be let back in, trying to be remembered, trying to not be alone. If you ever see something that doesn't make sense, something that repeats at the same time, the same place, don't ignore it. It might be more than coincidence. And if someone no one else can see keeps coming back, maybe they're not looking to scare you. Maybe they just want someone to finally open the door. Sometimes the scariest place isn't outside, it's beneath your feet, inside. The last place you'd ever expect. Story 6 is next. Story 6. The thing beneath the ball pit. The McDonald's on South Sonoran Boulevard in Orlando still had an active play place, which was rare these days. Most locations had shut theirs down, but this one remained a draw for families in the neighborhood. The plastic slide, bright tunnels, and padded climbing zones were cleaned once a week, though the ball pit had always given me a weird feeling. I'd been working maintenance for about 8 months, mostly night shifts after the restaurant closed. It was my job to inspect the playground, repair loose panels, and make sure the area stayed safe for kids. I took pride in doing the job right. I didn't cut corners, not even when I started noticing something strange. The first time it happened, I had stayed late to reseal the mats beneath the pit. It was just past 2 in the morning, the restaurant long since closed, and I was the only one in the building. I had turned off the main lobby lights, but the glow from the kitchen monitors cast a soft light across the playground. I stepped over the safety gate and knelt beside the pit. The smell of disinfectant hung thick in the air. I remember reaching into the colored balls to test the padding underneath and feeling a sudden shift. Not in the pit, in the air around me. It felt denser, like pressure was building in my ears. I paused. Everything was quiet, but I felt watched. I turned and scanned the empty restaurant. Chairs stacked. Fryers silent. No movement. I stood and stretched, planning to call it a night when I saw it. Deep within the pit near the far corner, a figure. Just a flash. A man's head barely above the sea of plastic spheres. He wasn't moving. His face was pale, blank eyes wide open. My chest tightened. I blinked. He was gone. I backed away, slowly, keeping my eyes on the ball pit, heart thudding in my chest. I told myself I was tired, that I had imagined it, but I didn't go back that night. I locked the playground doors and finished my reports from the break room. For the next few nights, I avoided the play place altogether. I focused on the rest of the building, did my work quickly, and left before midnight. But the thought stayed with me. That face. The stillness of it. Not angry, not sad, just present. About a week later, the store manager asked me to check the ball pit again. A customer had complained about an odd smell. I hesitated but said yes. I waited until the store closed. After everyone left, I took a flashlight and stepped back into the playground. The air smelled different. Not bad, but off. Like damp plastic and something faintly metallic. I turned on the flashlight and slowly swept it across the pit. Nothing moved. But when I stepped closer, I noticed something strange. Some of the balls were darker than usual, not dirtier, just subtly tinted like something had soaked into them from below. I pushed my hand into the pile deeper this time until I felt the bottom mat. That's when I touched something cold. Not the floor, something soft like fabric. I pulled my hand back instantly and dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor and stopped against the slide. The light beam landed on the far wall, and there, cast across the smooth plastic, was a shadow, a man's silhouette, sitting in the pit, shoulders hunched, head tilted, perfectly still. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The shadow didn't change. I slowly picked up the flashlight and pointed it directly at the pit. Nothing there. No figure. No man. Just empty balls. I reported it the next day. The manager said the cameras hadn't recorded anything unusual, but I checked the footage myself. Between 2:14 and 2:16 a.m. the feed froze, then returned, like the system had blinked. I started digging, asking old employees, checking forums, even talking to one of the assistant managers who had worked there for years. That's how I learned about Martin. He had worked security in the early 2000s, mostly nights. According to rumors, he used to nap in the play place during his breaks. Kids liked him, parents trusted him, until one day he didn't show up. They found his car in the lot, his badge in the office, but never found him. They said the only clue left behind was a single shoe buried deep in the ball pit, the same area I had touched. No one ever confirmed if it was true, but after that they locked the play place for months. Eventually it reopened. No announcement. Just business as usual. I started documenting everything. Each flicker of the lights, each cold spot near the pit. I even noticed that the maintenance reports for the area were often edited or rewritten as if someone had tried to erase something. But I kept copies. I wasn't letting it slide. One night I placed a small motion sensor beside the pit. Just a basic one, the kind that lights up when someone walks past. I armed it, stepped away and watched from the break room. At 2:15 a.m. the light blinked on. Just once. Then off I went back and the sensor had moved 2 inches. Not tipped over, moved. I stopped working nights after that. I asked to be transferred, said I needed daytime shifts. They granted it without question, but sometimes I still check the footage, and sometimes I still see the shape, that same shadow sitting just below the surface, watching. I don't know what Martin wanted. Maybe he never left. Maybe he got lost in the place he spent every night. A place meant for laughter and light, now holding something silent and cold. Maybe that's what happens when places outlive the people who haunt them. They start remembering on their own. If you ever feel something's off, even in a place built for joy, trust your gut. Sometimes it's not about fear. Sometimes it's about respect. For the ones who stay behind, for the stories no one wants to tell. Listen closely. Even ball pits, remember, not every mystery knocks. Some slide silently through a window that was never built. Hear stories even. Story 7. The Drive-Thru that didn't exist. The McDonald's on Yarborough Drive in El Paso had only 2 drive-thru windows like most locations. One for pay and one for pickup. Simple, functional, efficient. I'd worked there 5 years, mostly closing shifts. As assistant manager, I oversaw the drive-thru register, end-of-day inventory, and nightly reports. We had our routines, our regulars, a few harmless pranks now and then. But last winter things changed. Quietly at first, just enough to make you second guess your memory. It began with a customer note. Our new online system let people leave custom pickup instructions. Most were straightforward, extra napkins, no pickles. But one night, just past 11, an order came in with something different. The instructions said, "Window 3, please." I stared at the screen for a moment, confused. There was no third window. I thought it was a typo. I asked the crew if anyone had ever seen something like that. They hadn't. We handed the order out, like normal. End of story, I thought. 2 nights later, it happened again. Same note, window 3, please. Same order, medium fries, filet-o, fish, and a small Sprite. Same name on the ticket, Carmen. That caught my attention. My name, but it wasn't my order. The system didn't flag it as suspicious. Just processed like everything else. I asked the cashier if it could be someone messing around. She shrugged it off, said it was probably just a coincidence. Then came the third night. The same order, same name, same note, window 3, please. This time I checked the customer history. That's when I noticed something that didn't make sense. The account hadn't been active in over a decade. The last recorded transaction was from 2012. The address linked to it had been wiped. No phone number, no email, just a name and a note. I printed the ticket and took it home. It sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I kept staring at the handwriting. It looked faint, not like printed ink, more like it had been copied. Faded at the edges. I showed it to my brother who used to work in IT. He tried to trace the account but couldn't find anything. He told me it looked like a ghost entry, a digital remnant. Sometimes he said the system logs things that shouldn't exist anymore. The following week it escalated. During inventory, I noticed certain items were missing. Not a lot. One sandwich wrapper here, a fry container there. Small things. The cameras didn't catch anything. The log showed no errors. It was like the food had disappeared between stations. One night just after midnight, the monitor glitched. For half a second, a third window layout appeared on the screen. It looked like our store, but slightly off. The lighting was dimmer, the colors more washed out. The window frame was cracked. Then it vanished. I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, long hours, and overactive imagination. I tried not to think about it, but the next night the order came again. Window 3, please. This time I didn't hand it out. I canceled it, deleted it from the system, but the next day the ticket was back in the queue. Same time. Same message. I started digging. I found an archived blueprint of our location from 2009. It showed something odd. A third window on the far end of the building. It had been marked for construction but never built. A canceled project. Probably a mistake. But I kept thinking about that shadowed window I saw in the glitch. It looked exactly like the design. I couldn't let it go. One night after close, I walked around the building with a flashlight. I reached the back wall near the dumpsters. Nothing but brick and concrete, but as I stepped closer, I felt it. A faint breeze coming from a seam in the wall. I pressed my hand against it. The surface felt different, cooler, almost soft. I leaned in and heard something. Not voices, not footsteps, just static, faint and constant. Like a radio between stations, I backed away and returned inside. I didn't tell anyone, but I started watching the orders more carefully. Every time the window 3 message appeared, something strange followed. A light would flicker, a register would reset. One night the headset picked up a whisper. Not a voice, Not in any language I knew. Just noise, deep and low and steady. Then came the final night. A coworker named Luis was covering Drive-Thru while I did reports. At 12:03 a.m., he called out over the headset. His voice was shaky. He said someone was at window 3. I rushed to the front. He was pale, staring at the monitor. I looked. The camera feed showed the outside wall, empty. But Luis insisted. He said a hand had reached out, thin gray, unmoving. He dropped the bag on the floor and ran outside. I followed, but there was no one there. Luis quit the next morning. Said he couldn't explain what he saw. Said it didn't feel like a person. Said the air around the window had changed, like it wasn't real. Since then, the order stopped. No more tickets, no more notes. But the third window still shows up sometimes, just for a blink. Like something trying to come through, or maybe something we almost built found a way anyway. I still work there, still close up every night. But I avoid the back wall now. I don't check the monitors after midnight. I don't listen to the headset if it starts to hum. And if I ever see that note again, I won't read it. I'll just hit cancel and walk away. Not everything we plan stays unreal. Sometimes the things we abandon find their own way into our lives, through forgotten entries, through broken code, through doors we never finish building. And if something keeps asking for a place that doesn't exist, maybe it's not a joke, maybe it's a memory, trying to rewrite itself, trying to be delivered. And finally, some routines never die, even if the person following them already has. This is our last story. Story 8. The last Coca-Cola refill. The McDonald's on West Roosevelt Road in Chicago was a strange place to work the night shift. It sat on the edge of a busy neighborhood that never truly slept, but the store itself seemed to exist in a slower rhythm. I had been there for 6 months, working from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., mostly on register duty and restocking the lobby. Most of the time it was uneventful. A few rowdy customers, a handful of tired drivers and regulars who barely looked up from their phones. But then there was the man with the Coca-Cola. He started showing up around 1 in the morning. Always alone. Always quiet. He wore a navy jacket and an old baseball cap pulled low over his face. He never ordered food. Just walked in, filled a large cup with Coca-Cola from the self-serve machine, and sat at the same booth near the window. We assumed he came in from the street. Maybe homeless. Maybe just passing through. He never caused problems and the managers never asked questions, but something about him unsettled me. He didn't speak. He didn't make eye contact. He would sit in silence, sipping slowly, watching the street through the glass like he was waiting for something that never arrived. What caught my attention first was that no one ever saw him fill the cup. We'd look away for a moment, and when we turned back, he was already seated, the drink in front of him. Not full, not empty, just always there. One night after closing, I went through the daily footage. We had a new camera system installed, and I was curious to see what it captured. I scrubbed through the recording, looking for the moment the man entered, but he wasn't there. The camera showed the door. It showed me cleaning customers coming and going, but no sign of the man. No entry, no refill, just empty frames. Then suddenly he was seated at the table. It didn't make sense. I told my coworker Marcus about it. He laughed at first, said I was seeing things, but when he checked the footage himself, his face changed. He didn't say much after that, just shook his head and said we should let it go, but I couldn't. There was something wrong. The next night I kept my eyes on the door. Midnight passed. Then 1 a.m. came and like clockwork, he was there, same booth, same cup. I walked over slowly, watching his movements. He didn't look up. I noticed his hands were pale, too pale, and the cup he held didn't have our current logo. It was an older design, one we hadn't used in years. I went back behind the counter and searched the storage room. We didn't have any cups like that. No old stock, no leftovers. It was like he had brought it with him, or maybe it had stayed with him. I started digging through our old employee logs just to see if maybe he was a former worker or someone who had reason to be tied to the place. Buried in a report from 2015, I found a name. Patrick Weller, night shift janitor, died in the store. Heart attack. Found slumped in the booth near the window. No known family. The report was brief, no photos, no details, but the time of death was listed as 1:08 a.m. That booth. That same booth. I printed the report and kept it with me. That night I waited. When he appeared, I watched his face more carefully. The cap still hid most of his features, but I caught glimpses. His skin was grayish, unnatural. His eyes never blinked. He sipped the Coke slowly, almost mechanically, like he wasn't tasting it. Just repeating the action. Again and again. I placed the report on the table near him. He didn't react, didn't move. I stepped away, heart racing, unsure why I even tried. When I looked back, the paper was gone. The next morning, I found the cup sitting by the machine. Empty, but not thrown away. Just placed like it had been returned. A small gesture, an acknowledgement. After that, he didn't come back for 3 nights. The booth stayed empty. The lobby felt colder, quieter, like something had been removed. But then on the 4th night, a new customer arrived. A woman. Older, worn coat. She looked around nervously, holding a crumpled photo. She asked if someone named Patrick worked here. I told her no, not anymore. She sighed and sat down in the same booth. Ordered a Coke. Drank in silence. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "He used to sit there every night. Said he liked watching the traffic lights. I said it calmed him. I asked if she was family. She shook her head. Said she was just someone who remembered. Sometimes I wonder if that's all he needed. Not closure, not attention, just someone who remembered. Someone to sit with him in the silence, even if only for a moment. If you ever notice something that doesn't add up, something small and strange that keeps repeating, don't look away. Pay attention. It might not be a glitch. It might be a trace. A loop. A final habit left behind by someone who never really left. People leave marks, even after they're gone, especially if they had nowhere else to go. I still work nights. I still check the booths before closing. But now when I see a lone cup left behind, I don't throw it out right away. I let it sit a little longer, just in case. 8 stories. 8 quiet reminders that some things stay long after closing time. Sometimes it's not the screams or the shadows that stay with us, but the silence in between. The cup left on a table. A smudge on the mirror. A whisper behind a locked door. Each story you've heard tonight wasn't about monsters. Not really. They were about the marks people leave behind. In code, in habit, in the places where they once felt invisible. If any part of what you've heard made you pause, made you remember something, or simply made you feel less alone in the dark, then maybe that's what matters most. Thank you for staying with me through the quiet. If you want to hear more stories like these, you're always welcome here. Just hit follow and I'll keep the lights on. Until next time.